When it comes to competing at World Time Attack, obviously the Open and Pro Class cars are the ones that get a lot of the press. However, the budgets involved with competing at that level are insane. At the lower levels, there is the Club Sprint class, and while you're still not going to be competitive on a shoestring budget, these are the cars that most of us can relate to a little bit more. We're here with Benjamin Perry from Benchmark Solutions with the team ERS, or Evolution Racing Spares Mitsubishi EVO VI RS. We're going to find out a little bit more about what goes into making this car competitive. So, Ben, for a start, let's talk about the engine package in this car. Can you tell us what it is? I see there's a MoTeC badge or a MoTeC sticker on the head. Obviously, that's not normal with an EVO VI.
No. So the engine's a 2.2 variable cam MoTeC engine from an EVO 9. It's put together by Micks Motorsport for ERS. It still retains the MoTeC, which we like. It's slightly over capacity in 2.2 litres. And yeah, Kelford Cams, fairly mild compression.
Let's just come back to that MoTeC for those who aren't aware, maybe haven't sort of been spending time in Mitsubishi tuning circles. That is essentially continuously variable cam control where the ECU can advance or retard the intake cam, and the aim with this really is to improve the torque curve. You get the turbo spooling earlier and just a wider, more usable torque curve than a stock fixed cam?
Yeah, that's correct. So we use it with full advance low down to try and create as much efficiency as possible, get the car driving out of the corners as best as possible, and then to maintain that efficiency as the RPM goes up. With quite a small turbo on this engine, we're retarding it quite early to keep basically everything happy, and we try and use it as best as we can to maximise the power band or torque band.
Now, a problem you've sort of just alluded to as well, that continuously variable cam control, because you are moving the cam, it does limit the essentially what size cam profile can be fitted. Otherwise, you're starting to run into potential for valve-to-valve or valve-to-piston contact. So in a race application, is that compromise on the cam profile you can run, does that actually hold you back or cost you?
It does. It depends on the overall car setup. So this car's running a H-pattern dog box from Albins. That is a little bit different because obviously we're not always in that power band, which would optimize the cam. If we were running a sequential, which we'd have to go to open class, that would, because we're always in that 5 to 9 power band, it would remove the need for the variable cam much more than what it is at the moment. But at the moment, it makes a big difference.
So sort of to sum all of that up, really, if you are only going to be operating across a relatively narrow power band like you would with a sequential, really the advantages of the continuously variable cam control are offset by the ability to run a larger cam profile but fix it. Let's get into that turbo. You've said that it is a relatively small turbocharger. What is it?
So it's a BorgWarner EFR 7670. It's a 105 T4 twin scroll rear housing, externally gated. So for a street car, we would normally use those on a 2-litre engine and step it up to the 83. But time constraints and little to no testing on this car meant that this package was already put together, and ERS already had the turbo kit from FabTech with it all ready to go on their street car. So we used that this time, see how we go, get some data, and go from there.
It is important to also mention to those watching that this car is actually still street legal. So with that 7670, which as you've said, that's a pretty well-sized turbo for a 2-litre on a 2.2, it's actually going to be an insane package for a street car.
Yeah, it's very, very aggressive. It's almost too aggressive for street, which is sometimes fun, but sometimes not conducive to quick lap times.
Now, when you're talking about aggressive there, you're talking about the way the turbo comes on boost, being it's a small turbo, well, relatively small turbo for a 2.2 litre.
Yeah, that's right. So even on the gate spring, setting up boost by gear and ramp profiles, it hits very hard. Yesterday in the damp conditions and cold track, it was quite fun trying to keep it together, judging by the driver data. But yeah, it's good on the street. On the track, a little bit different, but yeah. So.
Now, you've already mentioned that gearbox, though, there before. In the Club Sprint class, as you've said, you're restricted to an H-pattern box. So there are some limitations around that. And you mentioned you've got an Albins 5-speed H-pattern in there. Even saying that you've got the H-pattern box, it is still possible to use gear cut ignition control for the upshift, really essential to, or a big advantage I should say, in improving acceleration. Driver can stay flat on the throttle, no need to use the clutch. Is that something you're implementing?
We have wired everything for the gear cut. The car was finished on Monday with no testing, so we decided to not add too many features at the same time to try and overwhelm the driver. It's his first time with the data acquisition and the dash package and all that stuff, so it will be implemented very soon, but not just yet.
Okay, so Micks Motorsport really have been the team for the engine package. You've come into it for the wiring and the electronics and the tuning. So let's get stuck into that electronics package. Can you tell us, for a start, what ECU you're running?
So it runs a M150 GPR set up from MoTeC with a custom package, implementing a few extra features with diff control and things like that.
Let's just jump into that. So for those who aren't aware with the MoTeC M1 system, it gives the ability to either run an off-the-shelf package or if you're that way inclined, you can write your own firmware to bring in basically any functions you can dream up. So you've just mentioned the active diff control. So let us know how that works. I know you're not running it right now, but tell us how you intend to use that in the future.
Yeah, so we're running an EVO 10 AYC ACD pump mounted in the boot. It's wired through power to the PDM and then actuator through the ECU. And then we're monitoring obviously your pressure and actuator control in the rear. It has center diff pressure from the actual active center diff into the ECU, and then we're running 4 wheel speed sensors with the G sensor out of the M150. And then it's all programmed. The ECU can make its decisions that way.
So essentially what you're going to be able to do then is program the torque split front to rear through that as the car goes around the track, depending on all of the conditions, to optimise the handling balance of the car as well as getting that power to the ground?
Yeah, exactly. So very similar to your OEM style with the active center diff and things like that, but it obviously adds the next element because everything's tunable this time. But yeah, torque splits and power to front and rear and stuff like that. So yeah.
All right, so we've gone over the ECU there. Let's talk about the rest of the electronics package. What are you using for a dash and logger?
So it runs a C125 MoTeC dash logger. It runs all the sensors itself are wired into the ECU. We run a Racegate TC8 for thermocouple lamps. We run a PDM15 with a keypad and control like that.
Let's just jump back to the TC4, so thermocouple amplifier. So what that essentially means, you're running individual EGTs, exhaust gas temperature per runner, and we'll just delve into that a little bit. How are you using that on the car?
Yeah, so we use the thermocouples to see where we're at tune-wise in regards to optimizing ignition timing. So we run some individual cylinder ignition timing changes based on knock and volume in the basically noise in the cylinders, and then we tune that on ignition timing advances where required to basically optimize the tune for the weather conditions and for the power levels, and making sure everything stays happy to do multiple laps rather than just on kill for one. So.
And that seems to be a way a lot of these cars are tuned. The drivers really can only go full speed for one flying lap, and then everything needs to cool down. Hey, let's come back to that C125 dash. So are you using this as a central logging hub, or is this just as a driver display? Because you've just said all of your sensors are wired into the M150. So with that package, you've really got the ability to run either the logging in the ECU or the dash. How are you choosing to do it?
Yeah, so we run the logging through the dash. It depends on which application, but this car we already had a logger dash for, so everything goes into any of the subsystems. They're all connected over CAN, and then that data is sent through to the dash from engine, wheel speed, turbo speed, everything you can think of, and then it's all analysed through I2 by pulling it out of the one location. Makes it easier to manage. You're not pulling data out of 4 or 5 different things at the same time.
Actually, I just want to delve into one aspect you just mentioned there. You mentioned turbo speed, and this is really a key with those BorgWarner EFR turbos. BorgWarner have made our life really easy because traditionally it was incredibly difficult to mount a speed sensor to the turbo. A lot of custom machining. With the EFR, it's as simple as drilling a hole through the compressor cover and fitting the sensor that comes off the shelf. So why is that speed sensor so critical to pushing an EFR turbo to the limit, and then how are you implementing that in the M1 ECU to protect the turbo?
So what we found found is that the EFRs are really efficient up to the speed limit and over the speed limit, which can be a bit dangerous because it gives you the tendency to just want to push until it stops making power, similar to like your Garretts and your Precisions. But what we have found is that they're insanely reliable when you use the speed sensor correctly and stick to the guidelines that BorgWarner give you. When you delve outside those, they can be insanely unreliable if you're way over the limit. So we're kind of riding the speed limit based on manifold pressure, and that's obviously fed into the ECU. We've got some speed sensor warnings on that come up through the ECU and the dash. I'm not implementing engine speed limits just because we don't want to lose, if we're on a green lap, any issues there. But on a street car, we will put a speed limit in if you had a major boost leak or something to do with that. But we already had a boost leak on the dyno on Sunday night, and I knew straight away because we were at gate pressure and seeing our turbo speed maxed. So I guess for finding issues, it's incredibly easy to find boost control issues in my experience. And a lot of people don't like them and they find them unreliable, but I think they're untouchable with transient and things like that. And using the speed sensor correctly enables us to maximize its potential.
Now, in terms of power and boost pressure, we haven't discussed that yet, so let us know what you're running and how much it's making.
Yeah, so the driver has a 4-position boost trim pot, and that allows him to select between about 17 to 18 gate spring PSI. Second setting's about 23 to 24, third's about 26, 27, and then 32 is the max shaft speed. So power-wise, it's about the 265 kilowatt mark on gate spring, about 310, 315 on the second setting, about 340 and then 380.
Those numbers also, those come off your mainline rolling road dyno, which we also own one of those dynos. Great dyno. We also know notoriously low reading dyno, so that's actually a pretty damn impressive result for that turbo on a mainline roller.
Yeah, so we normally see this turbo package on the previous car, on Fabtech's car, we tuned that about a year ago, and it made just over 400 kilowatts with a very similar setup. This track, because of the final drive ratio is quite short on the gearbox, we're having to use RPM to enable us to keep power down the main straight. Because of that, we've pulled boost back a little bit and we've pulled the engine tune back a little bit, being a track car, not a street car. So it's probably got about 15 to 20 kilowatts on the table. And because we're spinning it up around just over 9,000 at the highest point versus 7.5 to 8, power level's a little bit lower, but because we're on the track, you don't really, that 20 kilowatts you're not going to see, and it means everything's in one piece for the next session, which is the most reliable.
Now, in terms of that highest power setting, 380 kilowatts at the wheels, obviously that's going to be a handful for the driver to get to the track, particularly in the lower gears. So are you using any strategies through the ECU to help manage that? Yeah,
so we've got, yesterday in the wet weather, we were using quite aggressive throttle aim strategies, trying to pull some throttle blade movement out of it in the first 50 to 70% of the throttle pedal movement, just so it could get a nice even drive out of the corner. And then today with a dry track and a bit more temp in the tyres, we're basically running about the setting, about 22, 23 pound in first gear. We're not using first, second, and only just a bit of third. So we're running about 25 pound out of third, and then it steps up to about 28 in fourth, and then ramping towards, from about 6,000 upwards, we're all in.
So basically just managing that torque delivery to try and optimise the amount of traction available and not exceed that. All right, look, it's been great to get a little insight into this car, Ben, and we look forward to seeing how it goes for the rest of today. Thanks for giving us that insight.
No dramas, thank you very much.
If you like that video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and if you're not already a subscriber, make sure you're subscribed. We release a new video every week. And if you like free stuff, we've got a great deal for you. Click the link in the description to claim your free spot to our next live lesson.